Hello to everyone in the internet, and you are watching The Young Globalist. Alright, so today in the Young Globalist news, your free independent news, a federal judge has blocked the construction of the Keystone XL oil pipeline. Now, this pipeline was supposed to run roughly 875 miles long and would serve the purpose of transporting 830,000 barrels of crude oil from Canada all the way into the U.S. Now, of course, Trump wanted to push this without consideration of the effects on the surrounding area. This will include the effects it would have on farmers, ranchers, and Indians living in the area. Seems like the guy's more concerned about jobs and industry, creating jobs and industry, than actually treating people right, being fair to people living in the area. And the truth be known, the farmers, ranchers, and Indians are always being asked to take one for the team, without end. They're not just taking one for the team, they're taking a great many for the team. Yep, looks like Trump's being Trumpy again. And what I mean by that is being Trumpy basically means that he's just being concerned purely with the business end of things. Doesn't care about how it affects others. The effects on the environment alone are hard to say, but the transportation of all that oil would be very harmful. I don't think oil was ever really meant to be brought above the surface of the earth. It's created by natural geologic processes that take place under the soil. And that's honestly where it should probably stay. Find another power source. Oh, that's easier said than done. Still, at least that would be less harmful. How this would affect animals, crops, and the Indians in the area as well. They've been fighting it for years, and for good reason. But again, like I said, Trump is being his usual Trumpy self and thinking purely about business and not considering the consequences of how it would affect others. On this one, I'd say the president needs a good smack on the pants. I'd give it to him if I'd get away with it. Anyway. I just hope that this pipeline thing gets shut down soon, and that judge can continually block it. Why do you need to transport oil that far anyway? Well, Trump said that would make us less dependent on foreign oil. Right, so there'd be fewer invasions. But there's still the environment to consider. Find a better solution, Mr. Trump. Find a better one. That's all they want. That's all they're asking. I say hear him out. Stop being so Trumpy. Moving on. Trump's trying to end daca. You know, the Obama-era plan, daca. I don't remember what it's an acronym. I don't remember what the full thing was. But the funny thing is, most of these dreamers, as they call them, they have no ties to their nation of birth. This is just pure legalism, and it is not moral or consequential in any way. It's just pure legalism. Laws should not be here to supplant our values. Laws should simply be here to protect us from those who do not share our values with us. When you let laws and legalism become the morality of the land, bad shit happens. like putting teenagers who were just having innocent, you know, time, placed on a sex offender registry list, along with some very nasty people. You know, that's pure legalism right there. That's one example of how legalism screws everything up. Because the government screws everything up. Less government, the better. We still need it for infrastructure. We still need government for infrastructure, but let our values decide how things get done, I say. The real effects of sending someone to a country they have never known as opposed to remaining in one they do know. Put yourself in a DACA recipient's shoes for a minute and think. You're living under the threat of deportation. You get deported. You get sent to a country that you've never even known. You don't speak the language, you don't know the culture. You're a stranger in a strange land for all intents and purposes. This is not only unsettling and uncomfortable, but it can affect your ability to survive. It can affect your life in a way that could end up ruining it. I understand that it is wrong to put foreigners ahead of the American worker. But at the same time, simply sending them back without any further notice is absolutely cruel. It's very cruel indeed. And we're supposed to be against cruel and unusual punishment. We are. We are against cruel and unusual punishment, so where is that? Mind you, I acknowledge that they cannot stay here. Their impact on our country has been a negative one for the American worker, especially with Trump making all these jobs recently. Started out right 250,000 and fell back to like maybe 180,000. Probably as a ballpark. That's still way more jobs than there is unemployment. But at the same time, sending them back is cruel. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't, or at least that's how it would seem. Now, Trump claims Obama overstepped his constitutional powers when he created DACA. Now, I've looked into this heavily. I've seen a couple debates. I've read some articles. Sorry about the bad habit. Nothing so concrete as all that. Obama seems to have cleverly put DACA, snuck it into something of a legal gray area, where he was able to just kind of sneak it under the radar into a gray area, somewhere where it was unclear whether it was unconstitutional or not, so people would argue over it. They spend more time debating it and less time doing something to either aid or stop it. It's a classic political scheme. So it is not, while it is not clearly unconstitutional, it is also just as vaguely constitutional. And he claimed it was only ever meant to be a stopgap measure. Well, maybe so, but that stopgap measure kept going well after he was out of office. So that puts a little doubt on what on his statement. I think he intended on keeping it working for some time. Mind you, sending illegal immigrants raised in America back to the country of birth could have an overall positive cultural and financial benefit on that country, because they were raised here, therefore they have our values and our work ethic, which I think is a big part, at least in the past was a major part, of how we got to be a first world country in the first place, and how we got to be so awesome in the first place. if we could introduce that same work ethic and those same values down there with a better education and a better life, we could impact their culture for the better. Now, I know what some people are going to say, like, oh, what American work ethic? We're all fat and lazy and dumb. The funny thing is, the loudest minority will always appear to be the majority because of simply how loud they are. I've only seen, in my entire lifetime, and say a group of 10 people, 2 of them are morbidly obese. 1 of them is moderately obese, 2 of them are slightly obese, and the rest of them are healthy. That is the true ratio. It's an exaggerated truth. And I've known plenty of people with an amazing work ethic and values derived here in America. So my statement as is stands. In fact, I propose sending them to the country of their birth so that workers, non-foreign workers, American workers, can have their jobs, and dreamers, as we call them, can help build up their birth countries to be America-like, with American work ethic and values. Maybe go down there and create like a program, like a privately funded school, not government funded, but privately funded. I'll probably work up a proposal and send it to someone with that kind of influence. And this school will probably be placed in neutral territory with light guard, and it will be there to educate undocumented children to instill positive work ethic and values before sending them back to their birth country, either as adolescents or as adults. That would be preferable to DACA. I'm not saying that everybody wins. It would be rough. It would be hard. It might not even last that long. But the idea is to create an impact that could improve South American countries. And I think that would certainly do it. Sending them back alone will have some impact. We can increase the impact with this proposal and make things a little easier on them while they're down there. Moving on. A phone call harasser, 39-year-old Benjamin Craig Mathews, has targeted Don Lemons of CNN News. Yep. Now, these phone calls were pretty disturbing in nature. It vaguely resembles something I might say if I was really pissed at somebody and wanted to do something similar. Not that I condone this behavior, nor that I actually would, but if I was angry enough, this guy, from now on we'll just call him Benjamin Mathews, these disturbing phone calls in detail talking about, seeing Don Lemons hacked up into little pieces, or sending a phone call to his hanging corpse, things like that. But not only are these phone calls very disturbing, but they come less than 2 weeks after Cesar Sayoc's failed pipe bombings on major Democratic candidates. And the funny thing is, some of Brian Matthews' calls went to them as well. So I think there's a lot of reason to believe that he was directly inspired by Cesar Sayoc. There's even more reason to believe that by the fact that he has no prior criminal record that can be found in an electronic record in courts. In other words, he's never been to trial. So I'd definitely say that he was inspired by the Cesar Sayoc pipe bombings, but was obviously more intelligent than Cesar Sayoc was. Now, phone stalking is pretty scary. I mean, I've been hit by some scary phone calls in the past, too. They're scary, but frequently, a lot of the time, more often than not, you'll be perfectly safe. It's their intention to try and scare you, but they don't actually do any real harm. Mind you, the law is clear on threats and harassment. and legal consequences for Brian Mathews should be dealt with appropriately. Make the punishment fit the crime. I would say probably see him have a sentence of like a year in jail, a year, 2 years. Moving on. So Jeff Sessions was not actually fired, as liberal media suggested, but rather he resigned of his own free will at Trump's request. I imagine Jeff Sessions is probably going to retire anyway because he was rather old. He was going to resign anyway. But probably been on the job for too long supporting that sickening drug war. Jeff Sessions will be replaced by a colleague of Brett Kavanaugh. The likely effect is that this will most likely stir up the SWJ, and we'll have more riots out of the Supreme Court or wherever the Attorney General works like last time. So expect to see more of that. The replacement is Janice Rogers Brown. I would say that she's probably a hyphenator, because Rogers is not a middle name. Obviously a hyphenator, or a maiden name of some kind. Now, what I expect from this, being that since she is a colleague of Brett Kavanaugh, I therefore expect something, a similar agenda. Obviously, Trump is trying to arrange for those in power in this country to be, by and large, Republican. Or at least conservative. Which, in the financial sector, would be a good thing. But in terms of privacy, and in terms of, people's rights being violated or being abused, false arrests, immoral actions, stuff like that, you could potentially expect to see the drug war resumed in full. This is probably one of the few areas where I support the liberals. Legal marijuana, both medical and recreational, is more desirable than shit like police officers misidentifying a field of okra as pot and essentially ruining people's lives by destroying their okra. And shit like that. That's just one famous example. That's just one out of a barrel. So there'll be less spending, but oddly more taxes. And also, most likely a resumption of the drug war. Moving on. The Faithful Patriot operation is being renamed Mexican Border Mission. This is the operation, of course, that Trump started to try and prevent immigrants from crossing into the border. Who the hell cares what it's being called? This is more evidence that there's political correctness both in the Pentagon and in government in general. Everyone's gone PC because, like I said earlier, the loudest minority appears to be the majority based on how loud they are. And since the SWJ is nice and loud, people are going to take them as credible, thinking that they're the majority when they're not. Demanding political correctness and being unoffensive. And then that's how it gets spread into the actual majority and becomes a part of our modern lexicon. Albeit Mexican Border Mission, I feel, is probably just, it's more appropriately descriptive. It communicates more of what it's really about than Faithful Patriot. I'm not even sure how that terminology even applies. Anyway, moving on. Oh, I guess that's it for today. I expected more. Well, I didn't have much more to offer you. Anyway. Tschüss.